Sarah was a strong woman, but the weight of the world seemed to bend her shoulders with every dawn. The sound of the alarm clock at 5:30 in the morning was a reminder that another day of struggle had begun. Next to her, in a makeshift bed with thin blankets, was Lily, her 7-year-old daughter, a child who had already learned what it was like to give up things that many children can't even imagine. Sarah watched Lily's face, so innocent and yet so marked by hardship. Every line of concern on Sarah's face was proof of her love and sacrifice. The apartment where they lived was not much more than a cramped room with a small kitchen and a bathroom. The walls, peeling with time, seemed to carry the same burden as Sarah. There, every object told a story of sacrifice. The old stove, which was already showing signs that it would soon need to be replaced. The fridge, which chilled food irregularly. And the worn-out bed, which creaked with every movement, as if protesting against the weight of unfulfilled dreams. However, that small space was all they had, and Sarah strove to make it a home, despite the limitations. That morning, while Lily was still asleep, Sarah got up and went to the window to look out over the busy streets of her neighborhood. The neighborhood was a mix of simple buildings and small stores, where hurried workers and people in search of a living began their daily journeys. She saw people walking from one side to the other, carrying bags, pushing trolleys, facing the rush and chaos of a city that didn't offer much space for rest. Sarah sighed and picked up her cell phone. Once again, she checked her messages in the hope of a positive response to one of the many job interviews she'd had. But nothing. The silence on her cell phone screen was a reflection of her own lack of opportunities. She then walked over to the mirror and, as she combed her hair, reflected on the years that had passed since she had been left alone to look after Lily. Each white strand on her head was like a mark of the constant battle to provide for her daughter. As she left the room, she approached Lily, who was now waking up slowly, blinking her eyes while still drowsy. "Good morning, Mommy," Lily whispered with a light smile, a smile that lit up Sarah's tired eyes. "Good morning, my love," replied Sarah, stroking her daughter's cheek. "We're going to have a busy day today. I need you to be my companion, okay?" After a simple breakfast, consisting of slices of bread that Sarah had saved from the night before and some warm tea, they got ready to leave. Lily, even at her young age, understood that they couldn't spend too much and always ate slowly, enjoying every bite. This silent understanding between mother and daughter was what kept Sarah going, even in her most desperate hours. Her mother, for her part, tried to disguise her scarcity with words of encouragement and a look that conveyed security. Although inside, she felt the weight of every penny they had to save. The two left the building and began walking through the bustling streets of the neighborhood. Sarah held Lily's hand tightly, protecting her from the constant movement of passing cars and motorcycles. Their route was on foot, as money for public transport was a luxury they could only afford in cases of extreme need. Sarah had a well-defined route. She would pass grocery stores, where she would sometimes get some fruit that was close to spoiling and therefore cheaper, and then head towards the alleyways, where some more generous shopkeepers would hand out leftover bread and vegetables. Along the way, Sarah and Lily chatted. "Mom, when I grow up, I want to work and earn money for us," Lily said, with the purity of a child who believed she could change the world. Sarah smiled, hiding her sadness at the thought of their uncertain future. "And you will, my princess. You're going to be someone very important," Sarah replied, trying to keep the flame of hope alive in her daughter's heart. Sometimes they would meet other mothers in the same situation, women with faces scarred by life, who would offer a quick greeting and exchange words of mutual support. "Today is difficult for everyone," one of them would say, while Sarah nodded in silent agreement. They were part of a kind of unofficial community, where solidarity and understanding were the only consolation. As midday approached, Sarah knew they would need a place to rest. It was at these times that they went to Mike's restaurant, a simple place with wooden tables and a worn counter, but which exuded a human warmth that was hard to find. Mike was a generous man who understood the difficulties of those who had nothing and always offered a meal to those in need. He knew Sarah and Lily and treated them with warmth, always with a welcoming smile. In the restaurant, Sarah and Lily sat at a table near the window. Lily loved to watch the people passing by, always wondering about their lives. "That lady looks so happy, Mom. Do you think she has a daughter too?" asked Lily. Sarah just smiled, responding with a gentle caress of the girl's hair. As they ate the meal provided by Mike, Sarah thought about the future. She knew that she couldn't depend on that restaurant forever, and that she had to find a way to give Lily a better life. At the same time, she was internally grateful for Mike's generosity, knowing that not everyone was willing to help those in need. The plate of food in front of them was more than a meal. It was a reminder that there was still goodness in the world, and that maybe, somehow, things could get better. After the meal, Sarah offered to help clean up, a gesture that Mike always gratefully accepted. "You're always welcome here, Sarah. Don't worry. I can see how hard you work for your daughter," he said with an understanding look. Sarah smiled back, although inside she knew that, even with Mike's goodwill, she couldn't depend on that kindness forever. On the way back to the apartment, the sun was beginning to set, and the shadows of the trees stretched across the sidewalks. Lily held Sarah's hand, and the two walked in silence, feeling the fatigue of the day in their feet and backs, but with their hearts warmed by the strength they found in each other. As they entered the building, Sarah looked at her daughter, who was still smiling, and felt grateful for every little moment they shared. When they arrived at the apartment, Sarah helped Lily take a quick shower, and as her daughter fell asleep, she settled down next to her, thinking about what she needed to do the next day. The difficulties were many, but the hope of a better future, however fragile, kept her firm. She knew that, however difficult the road, she would do everything in her power to give Lily the life she deserved. And so Sarah closed her eyes, exhausted but determined, ready to face another day of struggle, certain that as long as she had Lily by her side, she would find the strength to go on. It was a Saturday morning, and Sarah had decided to use the day to look for work again. Despite being exhausted by the constant battle for a better future, her desire to provide a decent life for Lily never waned. Walking through the neighborhood, she spotted an old friend, Angela, sitting on a bench in the square with a worried expression, her eyes wandering aimlessly. Angela, like Sarah, was a single mother who knew all about life's challenges. As she approached, Sarah smiled, and Angela gave her a warm hug in return. "Long time, Sarah. How are you and Lily?" asked Angela, as she motioned for her to sit down next to her. "We're fine, as far as we can. But you know how it is, the fight goes on. Every day, trying to find a way to give my little one a better life," replied Sarah with a light sigh, but without losing the glimmer of hope in her eyes. Angela looked at her with a mixture of empathy and admiration. "You've always been so determined, Sarah. Even in the worst of times, I've never seen you give up. And Lily is so sweet. She deserves the world." Sarah lowered her head for a moment, thinking of the countless nights she had lost sleep worrying about how she would keep food on the table and the roof over their heads. Raising her gaze, she said firmly, "I'd do anything for her, Angela. Anything. Every day, when I look at Lily, all I can think about is how I need to find a stable job, how I want to see her grow up without having to go through all this. I want her to look at me one day and feel proud, to see that all this effort was worth it." Angela nodded silently, and then placed her hand on Sarah's, offering a touch of silent support. "Had you ever looked somewhere different? Sometimes we need to look in ways we've never considered before." Sarah sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I've been to so many interviews, I've sent my CV to so many places. And just when it seems like it's going to work out, something always ends up leaving me behind. It seems that for every step I take forward, something pulls me back." Angela reflected for a moment and then replied, "Maybe the secret is to take small steps, you know? Sometimes life takes a while to show you the right path. But don't let these difficulties erase your dream. You have such a beautiful goal. You deserve a chance." Sarah smiled gratefully, feeling encouraged by her friend's words. "Thank you, Angela. I really needed to hear that today. Sometimes I feel like I'm fighting the world alone. You know, I dream so much of a life where Lily and I don't have to worry about the basics. A life where she can choose the school she wants to study at, where she can have a future with choices. I want her to be happy." Angela looked up at the sky and smiled. "Who knows, Sarah? Maybe you're closer to that dream than you think. Have you ever thought about how your determination could be what opens that door? Maybe the answer is closer than you think." Sarah's face lit up and she laughed softly. "I don't know, Angela. Maybe it's like you say, maybe I just need to trust the process a little more. But sometimes I feel so tired." Angela, observing the tired expression on her friend's face, squeezed her hand tightly. "You're strong, Sarah. Remember that. Things may be difficult now, but I know that you have something that no one can take away from you. the strength of a mother, and that strength is capable of turning dreams into reality. The wind blew lightly in the square, and Sarah looked around, seeing children playing and mothers laughing in the distance. In her heart, she knew that everything she was doing was for Lily. One day, Angela, one day I know will all be worth it. I want to give my daughter what I didn't have. A safe home, a chance to study, to grow up without so many worries. I won't rest until I get that. Angela smiled, touched by her friend's sincerity. And you will, Sarah. I believe in you. Sarah was silent for a moment, reflecting on the weight of her words. For her, the desire for a better life for Lily wasn't just a dream. It was a need that drove her every step of the way. You know, Angela, I look at other mothers and sometimes I feel so far away. They have jobs, they manage to provide things for their children. I just wish Lily could have those things too, that she could have more than just survival. I want her to have a childhood that she can remember with joy. Angela nodded. And it's exactly this dream of yours that will carry you forward, Sarah. You've already taken so many steps, and even when the doors have closed, you've kept going. That's something very few people manage to do. Never underestimate your strength. The conversation continued as the two friends shared their dreams, fears, and hopes. For Sarah, that exchange was a balm, a renewal of strength. Despite the difficulties, her determination remained intact. And at that moment, sitting next to Angela, she felt that somehow she was on the right path, even if it was full of obstacles. They got up to continue walking, and Angela accompanied her to the point where they needed to say goodbye. Before she left, Angela turned and said, Sarah, don't forget what we talked about today. When things get tough, remember that you're not alone and that you have a strength that goes beyond what the eye can see. Keep trying one day at a time. Sarah smiled, nodding as Angela walked away. Her friend's words echoed in her mind, and she decided that she would try one more time that day. She would knock on new doors, send out new CVs, and keep looking, because she knew that Lily deserved it all. When she returned home, she found Lily playing with a rag doll. The image of her daughter, so small and full of life, filled Sarah with a new strength. She knelt down beside the little girl and said, You know, child, Mommy has a dream. And that dream is that one day we'll have everything we need, that you'll be able to have everything you've ever wanted. Lily smiled, not quite understanding what her mother meant, but feeling the sincerity and love in her words. I have a dream too, Mom. My dream is that we can always be together. Sarah laughed and hugged her daughter tightly, feeling the warmth of that moment. This dream, my love, is the most beautiful of all, and I promise I'll do everything I can to make it a reality. With her head full of plans and a renewed determination, Sarah spent the night reflecting on the steps she would take over the next few days. The conversation with Angela had planted a new spark of hope in her heart. She knew the road was long, but as long as she had a dream and the love of her daughter, she would continue to walk every step of the way. And so, once again, she prepared to face adversity with one goal in mind: to give Lily the future she deserved. For Sarah and Lily, Mike's restaurant was more than a place to eat. It was a breathing space in the midst of the storm of difficulties they were facing. Every afternoon, after a long day of looking for a job and doing small tasks to earn the bare minimum, Sarah and Lily would stop by the restaurant, where they would find a moment of relief and, above all, a hot meal. Mike, the owner of the restaurant, was a man with a generous heart, someone who knew well the reality of people like Sarah. He had inherited the restaurant from his father, and although the business had never been a source of wealth, it was enough to maintain a simple life and offer, when he could, a meal to anyone in need. He knew that a single meal could make a difference to a person's life. However, Mike himself was facing his own difficulties. The restaurant, which had once been frequented by local workers and residents, was now suffering from a drop in business. The empty tables, which had once echoed with the sound of conversation and laughter, were now filled with a sad, heavy silence. The venue's rent was rising, food costs were constantly going up, and customers were scarce. Increasingly, Mike found himself with his hands tied, unable to keep up with the payments. The few customers who still showed up were mostly people who couldn't afford to pay for their meal. One afternoon, after finishing the dish Mike had so lovingly prepared, Sarah looked around at the empty tables. Something bothered her deeply. She felt that, just like her, Mike was struggling to survive. Seeing this gave her a sense of urgency she had never felt before. Lily, who noticed her mother's pensive gaze, asked in a soft voice, "Mom, what's wrong? You look sad." Sarah looked at her daughter and smiled. "I'm fine, my love. I'm just thinking about how good Mr. Mike is to us. He always helps us, but I think he needs help too." Shortly afterwards, Mike approached the table to collect the plates. He already knew Sarah and Lily well enough to notice when something was different. "Are you all right, Sarah? You got a pensive look on your face today," he commented, trying to sound relaxed, but the tiredness was visible on his face. Sarah sighed, deciding to express her thoughts. "Actually, Mike, I was thinking, you're very generous in helping us, and I can't thank you enough for that. But if I may ask, is the restaurant okay? I've noticed that there are fewer people here, and I can't help worrying about you." Mike, who was not the kind of man to express his difficulties openly, hesitated for a moment. However, the sincerity in Sarah's eyes made him relax. "You know, Sarah, keeping this restaurant going has been a struggle, especially in recent months. It's getting harder and harder to make ends meet. Sometimes I think about selling the place, but it has so much sentimental value for me. It's more than a business. It's what my father built, and I've always dreamed of continuing his legacy." These words touched Sarah's heart deeply. She knew all too well the weight of having to give up her dreams for the sake of survival. For her, seeing Mike, someone who had helped her so much, in such a difficult situation was almost unbearable. She knew there wasn't much she could do, but she decided that she would try to help him, if only with small actions. "You're a very special person, Mike. I don't know how, but I'd like to help. I have experience in advertising, and maybe we can think of something to attract more customers, some idea that will get people interested in the restaurant," said Sarah, letting out a spark of hope. Mike smiled, surprised and touched by her offer. "Sarah, I really appreciate it, but you're already going through so many difficulties. I don't want you worrying about my problems." But Sarah, with a determined look on her face, replied, "You've given us so much. This daily meal makes all the difference to me and Lily. I can't just stand by while the restaurant risks closing. Let's find a way. I believe that, together, we can think of something." Mike, still reluctant, eventually agreed. It was hard for him to accept help, but Sarah's warmth and empathy made him realize that there might be a way to save the restaurant. They decided that Sarah would come back the next day so that they could discuss ideas. On the way home, Sarah felt excited. For the first time in a long time, she felt she could make a difference not only to her life, but to someone who had been essential in her own journey. "Mom, are we going to help Mr. Mike?" asked Lily, her eyes shining. "Yes, child. We're going to help in our own way. He's helped us so much, and I think it's time we gave something back. Sometimes we need to do something for someone who has already done so much for us," said Sarah, squeezing Lily's hand affectionately. She felt that this would be an opportunity not only to help Mike, but also to show Lily the value of gratitude and mutual support. The next morning, Sarah returned to the restaurant where she found Mike waiting for her. They spent hours discussing possibilities, and Sarah's creative mind soon began to flow with ideas. "We could come up with some weekly promotions. Maybe something fun that would catch people's attention," Sarah suggested enthusiastically. "We could do something like a guessing night, where customers try to guess what the dish of the day will be and get a discount if they get it right." Mike laughed, delighted with the idea. "That sounds like fun, and it could also attract new people to the restaurant. People looking for a different experience," he commented, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in months. He had almost given up, but Sarah was bringing a new energy to the place. Over time, ideas began to take shape. Sarah proposed that the fortune-telling evenings should also feature live music, which would bring a livelier atmosphere to the restaurant. Mike excitedly commented, "My son Ethan plays the guitar. Maybe he could perform and help make these evenings special." Sarah agreed, and so they agreed that they would try out these ideas throughout the week. Mike offered a small space for Sarah and Lily to rest at the back of the restaurant, knowing that this would help them and that their help was more than deserved. This gesture further strengthened the bond between them, and Sarah felt that this place had somehow become a temporary home. In the days that followed, Sarah worked diligently, thinking up strategies, decorating the restaurant for the special nights, and making sure everything was ready. Ethan, Mike's son, although shy, was willing to collaborate, and while he was playing to the public for the first time, he was surprised by the warm reaction of the customers, who were gradually returning to the restaurant. That evening, when he saw the restaurant fuller than ever, Mike looked at Sarah with gratitude in his eyes. He knew that, without her, he wouldn't have been able to give his business another chance. Feeling a deep connection, Mike recognized that the restaurant was not just a legacy from his father. It was a place where he could make a difference in the lives of others, just as he had done with Sarah and Lily. And so, between a meal and a conversation, Mike's restaurant began to be reborn, with Sarah and Lily by his side, sharing not just a meal, but the hope of a better future. That evening, after another day working to attract customers to Mike's restaurant, Sarah sat at one of the empty tables, exhausted. Tiredness weighed heavily on her body, but there was something even heavier in her heart: doubt about the future. The little money she made from small jobs was insufficient to cover her expenses, and the rent for the small apartment where she lived with Lily was once again overdue. The thought of having to leave the place was terrifying, but it seemed that this possibility was getting closer and closer. As Sarah reflected, Mike approached and noticed her worried expression. "Are you all right, Sarah? You look more tired than usual today," he said, in the gentle voice he always used when talking to her. Mike could see that, apart from her work at the restaurant, something else seemed to be weighing on her shoulders. Sarah sighed and lowered her gaze, hesitant to share her difficulties. After all, Mike had already done so much for her and Lily. But seeing the sincerity in his gaze, she decided to be honest. "To be honest, Mike, I'm struggling to pay the rent. I don't know how much longer we'll be able to stay where we are." Mike nodded with a look of understanding, but also of concern. He knew that Sarah was struggling, but he hadn't imagined that the situation was so critical. After a few seconds of silence, he commented, "Sarah, you know you can always count on me. This restaurant is yours as much as it is mine. If you need anything, just let me know." She looked at him, feeling a wave of emotion invade her heart. Mike's generosity was a flame of hope in the midst of so many difficulties. However, Sarah knew that accepting more help without offering something in return was not an option. She had too much pride and, despite the adversity, wanted to be someone who could also contribute. Then an idea began to form in her mind. Sarah swallowed, feeling a growing nervousness at the thought of what she was about to propose. But at the same time, she knew she didn't have much choice. In a soft but firm voice, she began to speak. "Mike, I have a proposal for you. I know this restaurant isn't at its best, and I know you're struggling to keep it open. I'd like to help more, to do something that really makes a difference. In exchange, I thought maybe Lily and I could stay at the restaurant overnight. That way, at least we'd have a secure roof over our heads until we can get back on our feet." Mike was surprised by the proposal and looked at Sarah, gauging the sincerity in her gaze. He knew her situation was difficult, but the idea of offering shelter in the restaurant had never crossed his mind. The idea was unusual, but he could see Sarah's courage in proposing something like this. "Are you sure you want to do this, Sarah? I mean, I know the restaurant is a nice place, but it's not the most comfortable environment to live in," said Mike with a touch of concern. Sarah nodded, although a part of her was still filled with doubt. "I know it's not ideal, Mike, but what's most important to me now is Lily's safety. Here, at least I know we'll be protected. And in return, I could do more for the restaurant. I can look after it at night, make preparations, think of new ideas to attract customers. I don't want this to be just a favor." Mike watched her for a moment, reflecting on the proposal. He saw the sincerity and strength of will in Sarah's eyes, and, although he hesitated to accept this exchange, he knew that she needed a safe place and that he was offering his help wholeheartedly. Finally, he nodded with a slight smile. "All right, Sarah, if that's what you want, the restaurant will be your temporary home. You're part of the family here, and so is Lily." Hearing these words, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. Still, a hint of doubt remained. She knew she was entering a new and uncertain situation, but Lily's well-being came above all else. Every day, she saw how her daughter was growing up, how she understood what was going on, even if she didn't talk about it. Sarah deeply wished that Lily could have a more peaceful childhood, but at that moment, ensuring her safety was what really mattered. That evening, when she told Lily about her new decision, the little girl listened carefully. "Are we going to live in the restaurant, Mommy?" she asked curiously. "Yes, my love, but it'll be temporary, just until Mom gets a better place. And in the meantime, we're going to help Mr. Mike make the restaurant a special place. Let's make it beautiful, full of life," said Sarah, trying to convey enthusiasm and hope to her daughter. Lily smiled and, in her innocence, replied, "It's okay, Mom. If you're with me, I'm happy anywhere." These words touched Sarah's heart deeply. For Lily, what really mattered was being by her mother's side, and Sarah felt that this decision, despite the uncertainties, was the right one. With one last look of gratitude at her daughter, she made a commitment to herself to do everything she could to ensure that this time at the restaurant was just a brief chapter in their lives, a stepping stone to something better. Over the next few days, Sarah devoted herself wholeheartedly to the restaurant. She knew that Mike had given her and Lily a chance, and she was determined to repay this gesture with her work. During the day, she helped with the organization, thought up new advertising strategies, and at night, when the restaurant closed, she and Lily improvised a small space in the back where they slept together. The cold floor and simple walls didn't matter. For Sarah, this was a safe haven where she could feel protected alongside her daughter. However, not everything was easy. There were times when Sarah wondered if she was really doing the right thing. She looked at Lily sleeping on a makeshift mattress and felt a pang of pain at the thought of not being able to give her a more comfortable home. But at the same time, he remembered his promise to make sure that one day, Lily would have everything she deserved. One cold night, as she looked at her sleeping daughter, Sarah talked to herself in silence, trying to dispel her doubts. I don't know where this is going to lead, but I need to believe. I need to trust that this decision will lead us to a better future. After all, I'm doing this for her. Mike, for his part, could also see the change in the restaurant. Sarah's presence brought a new energy to the place, and he began to see positive results. Customers started coming in more often, attracted by the new promotions and the welcoming atmosphere Sarah was helping to create. Even though he was facing his own difficulties, Mike felt that this partnership was something that brought hope, not only for the restaurant, but for everyone who went there. Over time, Sarah and Mike developed a true friendship based on a mutual understanding of their struggles and a determination to overcome adversity. And so Mike's restaurant became, for Sarah and Lily, a temporary home, a refuge in the midst of uncertainty, but also a symbol of courage and resilience. Sarah knew that this was not the end of their journey, but a new beginning. And despite the difficulties, she felt that with the courage she had found, she could build a better future for her daughter. Because for Sarah, that was the only option, to keep fighting no matter how uncertain the path. When Sarah proposed to Mike the idea of helping out in the restaurant in exchange for shelter, she noticed that he hesitated. Although Mike was a generous man and had taken Sarah and Lily in by offering meals, the idea of opening the restaurant so that they could stay there every night was a much bigger issue. He felt uncomfortable trusting so deeply in someone he only knew superficially. Mike's hesitation was visible. His eyes, usually so friendly, were now cautious, and the smile that usually adorned his face had disappeared, replaced by a serious, thoughtful expression. Sarah felt the weight of the moment and realized that perhaps she was asking too much. She knew that her proposal was risky for both of them, but for her, it was an opportunity she couldn't pass up, a chance to finally guarantee a little stability for Lily. Mike scratched his chin, his gaze fixed on a distant point, as if he were trying to organize his own thoughts. Look, Sarah, it's not that I don't want to help, he began, his voice a little hoarse, but it's a big responsibility. Having someone living here, I don't know. I'm afraid it'll end up complicating things for all of us. Sarah felt her heart squeeze. She understood his doubts perfectly, but she knew she had to insist. With a firm, resolute gaze, she replied, I understand your concerns, Mike. I'm not asking for charity. I want to help you with the restaurant, make it a place that attracts more customers, and, in return, have a place where Lily and I can stay temporarily. I won't let you down, I promise. I just need a chance. Still, Mike remained silent, immersed in his own thoughts. He had struggled to keep the restaurant running, and, despite the kindness he always showed, experience had taught him to be cautious. Opening the restaurant for Sarah and her daughter was something that required more than he was used to offering. However, as he pondered, something caught his eye. Lily, who until then had been playing quietly at one of the tables, approached Mike and took his small, delicate hand. With an innocent smile, she said, Thank you, Mr. Mike. The food in your restaurant is the best I've ever eaten. My mom says you're a very nice person. These words, simple and unpretentious, touched Mike's heart in an unexpected way. He looked at Lily and for the first time realized the depth of the relationship between her and Sarah. They weren't just two people in a difficult situation. They were a mother and daughter who loved each other deeply, struggling together to overcome life's challenges. He saw in Lily a hope that made him question his own insecurities. Mike let out a long sigh, observing Lily's small hand holding his. In his mind, he began to remember his own son, Ethan, when he was younger. Like Lily, Ethan had a pure and generous view of the world, believing in the best in people. The memory of his son, now grown up, rekindled in Mike the empathy he always tried to carry in his actions. He looked at Sarah and, after a long moment of silence, said, "I really don't know if this is the best decision, but I'm willing to try. I can't promise it will be easy, but I can give you a chance. As long as you help me look after the restaurant and keep it running. Okay?" Sarah felt a deep sense of relief when she heard these words. The tension that had built up in her shoulders suddenly seemed to dissipate, and her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you so much, Mike. You don't know how much this means to us. I promise I'll do everything I can to help you and the restaurant. We won't let you down." Mike gave a slight smile, trying to disguise his own nervousness about the new situation. "Well, I guess we're partners now, in a way. I just want you to know, Sarah, that this is new for me too. I never imagined opening the doors of my restaurant to something like this. But if it helps all of us, it's worth a try." Sarah nodded, realizing the responsibility she was taking on. For her, this wasn't just an exchange of favors, but an opportunity to show that she could be useful, that she could make a difference. Deep down, she knew that this was a chance to rebuild her own life, and she was determined to honor Mike's trust, even if there were challenges. That evening, after finishing tidying up the restaurant and clearing the tables, Sarah settled down with Lily in a small corner at the back, where Mike had organized a makeshift space for them. The lights were dimmed, and the quiet atmosphere was welcoming in a simple, peaceful way. Lily, still awake, looked at her mother with a smile of admiration. "Mom, is Mr. Mike going to let us stay here? It's like a little house, isn't it?" asked Lily with a twinkle in her eye, enchanted by the simplicity of the place. Sarah smiled, her heart warmed by her daughter's innocence. "Yes, my little one, we're going to stay here for a while. We'll help Mr. Mike look after the restaurant. And in the meantime, we'll think of a way to get a place of our own, where you can have everything you deserve." Lily hugged her mother tightly and, with the simplicity of a child, whispered, "I like it here, Mommy. It's warm, and you're here with me. That's the most important thing." Lily's words were a silent confirmation that Sarah had made the right choice. Despite the difficulties and uncertainties, they were together, and that was what mattered. As Lily fell asleep, Sarah remained silent, reflecting on the path that had led them there. There was something comforting about the feeling of being in a safe place, however temporary, and the promise that this was only the beginning of a journey toward the better future. Over the next few days, Sarah worked hard at the restaurant. Under Mike's watchful and sometimes suspicious eye, she took care of every detail with dedication. She organized the tables, planned small changes to attract more customers, and little by little, the atmosphere began to come alive again. The customers noticed the difference, and some even commented on the new energy they felt in the place. Mike watched everything cautiously, still getting used to Sarah and Lily's presence. Sometimes he found himself watching Sarah in silence, impressed by her determination and ability to transform the environment. Every day, the initial mistrust he felt began to fade, replaced by a growing respect for the strength of this woman and the unconditional love she had for her daughter. One afternoon, while they were organizing the restaurant before the customers arrived, Mike approached Sarah and said, "You know, Sarah, I was wrong about you. At first, I was afraid to trust you. I thought it might be risky. But now I see that you really are committed to helping. I'm grateful for that." Sarah smiled, feeling a deep emotion as she listened to Mike's words. She knew she had won his trust, and for her, that was an important step. "Thank you, Mike. You have no idea how much this place means to us. Every day we spend here is an opportunity to start again, and I can only thank you for trusting us." And so, the initial mistrust Mike had felt was replaced by a genuine friendship, built on mutual respect and solidarity. Sarah knew that this was just one stage of her journey, but she felt that, with Mike's help and the strength she found in Lily, she could face any obstacle. Together, they turned the restaurant into more than a workplace. It was a refuge where they could build a better future. Sarah had a special way of observing the things around her, and at that moment, more than ever, she wanted to find a way to help Mike's restaurant thrive. She knew that, with turnover low, it was essential to attract new customers. Sitting at one of the tables with Mike and Ethan, she began to think of something simple, but that could generate curiosity in the neighborhood. She looked around the restaurant, analyzing every detail. The wooden tables, the worn counter, the menu fixed to the wall, everything there had a charm, but it lacked a special touch that would catch the eye of passers-by. After a moment's reflection, an idea began to take shape in his mind. With a slight smile of excitement, Sarah turned to Mike and Ethan. "I was thinking, what if we did something different? Something that involves a bit of fun and curiosity? How about a promotion where customers guess the dish of the day?" Mike raised his eyebrows, intrigued. "Guess the dish of the day? How would that work, Sarah?" Sarah excitedly explained. "We could create a promotion where the customer has a chance to guess the special dish you're going to prepare. If they guess correctly, they get a discount or a complimentary dessert. This can generate curiosity and even encourage people to come back more often to try and guess right." Ethan, who until then had just been listening, began to smile. "I think it's an interesting idea. People love games and challenges. It could really bring more movement. And who knows, some might even become regular customers." Mike, still reflecting, scratched his chin and looked up at the ceiling. He knew that the restaurant situation was critical and that he needed to try something new. "Well, we've never done anything like this before, but it could be fun, and if people like it, we can continue with this idea and even expand it. Besides, a promotion like this doesn't require much investment." Sarah agreed, excited by Mike's support. "Exactly. We can start simply and see how people respond. And I can help spread the word around the neighborhood myself. I'll let everyone know that the restaurant has something special going on." The next day, they prepared for the first guest night. Mike chose a special dish, a classic recipe that his father used to prepare on festive days. A meat stew with spices and fresh vegetables, cooked slowly until all the flavors blended together in perfect harmony. He knew that the aroma would be irresistible and that it could arouse the curiosity of anyone nearby. Sarah helped create small posters that were put up in the restaurant's windows, inviting everyone to take part in the promotion. "Come and guess the dish of the day and win a complimentary dessert if you get it right." The simple, straightforward text was accompanied by colorful drawings that Lily had made, making the poster even more attractive. Lily, who always accompanied her mother enthusiastically, was especially excited to see the posters being stuck to the windows. "Mom, do you think people will like guessing the dish?" she asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair and smiled. "I think so, my love. People like a surprise now and then, and you'll see, this will bring a lot of people to Mr. Mike's restaurant." When opening time arrived, Sarah, Mike, and Ethan were anxious. At first, only a few regulars showed up, but as the aroma of the stew spread through the air, more people started coming in, drawn by curiosity. Some approached the counter, looked at the menu, and asked about the promotion. A middle-aged man, curious and with a smile on his face, approached Mike. "So, what's on today? I hear you have a guessing game." Mike, still getting used to the novelty, smiled and explained the rule. "Today we have a special dish. If you guess what it is, you get a complimentary dessert. It could be anything on the menu, or maybe something off the menu. Are you willing to try?" The man laughed excitedly. "Come on, but it's some kind of stew, with meat perhaps?" He looked around, trying to catch the aroma wafting through the air. Mike feigned surprise and laughed. "Well done. Looks like you got it right on the first try. Enjoy your dessert." With the success of the first attempt, word spread quickly among the customers there and among the people passing through the restaurant. More people started coming in to take part in the game, enchanted by the simple but engaging idea. Ethan, who was at the counter, began to attend to a group of curious young people who also wanted to try their luck. "Hi guys, today you have the chance to guess the special dish. Whoever gets it right gets a dessert on the house. Anyone want to try?" The young people looked at each other, excited by the idea. Each of them made a guess, some closer than others, but everyone enjoyed the experience, even if some didn't get it right. Lily watched from one of the tables, her eyes shining with joy and pride. She looked at Sarah and, with a smile, said, "Mom, I think people are enjoying it. And look how many desserts they're getting." Sarah smiled back, feeling happy to see that the idea was working. "Yes, my love, sometimes a small idea can make a big difference." As the evening progressed, the restaurant was fuller than ever. People came in, laughed, made their guesses, and enjoyed themselves. The atmosphere was light and cheerful, and Mike, who had previously been worried about the future of the restaurant, now felt invigorated. He saw the smile on Sarah's face and realized that hope had been reborn there, not just for her, but for everyone. At the end of the evening, after the last customer had said goodbye, Mike closed the restaurant door and turned to Sarah and Ethan with a smile he couldn't contain. "I think today was the best day we've had in a long time. Sarah, your idea really brought a new air to the restaurant. I never imagined that something so simple could make such a big difference." Sarah, thrilled with the recognition, replied, "I'm glad it worked out, Mike. I just wanted people to have a different experience here, something that would make them feel special and also help the restaurant." Ethan, excited, added, "I've seen lots of places try complicated things, but this idea was so simple and fun that it worked really well. I think we should do it more often." Mike agreed, feeling refreshed. "You guys are right. Maybe this is the start of something new for the restaurant. And, Sarah, thank you for believing we could do this. You brought something that I didn't even know the restaurant needed." That night, as Sarah and Lily packed up their things in the small space where they slept, they reflected on what had happened. Sarah's initial idea, which had seemed so simple, had brought new hope to everyone. Lily, lying down next to her mother, said with a satisfied smile, "I knew it would work, Mom. I knew we'd be able to help Mr. Mike." Sarah smiled with emotion. "Yes, dear, and this is just the beginning. We're going to keep helping the restaurant, and who knows, maybe we can make it a special place for everyone." With that, mother and daughter fell asleep, lulled by the feeling that they were building something new and finally seeing a glimmer of hope amidst the difficulties. Despite the initial excitement about the plate guessing promotion, which had brought some new faces to the restaurant, Sarah and Mike soon realized that the results weren't enough. For a few days, traffic had increased slightly, but the number of customers soon fell again. The empty tables and the uncomfortable silence in the room reminded them that there was still a lot to be done to keep the business afloat. Sarah found herself worried again, sitting at one of the restaurant's tables, looking lost. Even with her creativity and commitment, the challenges seemed to increase every day. She felt the weight of responsibility, not only for being there in exchange for shelter for her and Lily, but also for seeing Mike's efforts threatened by something beyond his control. She knew that the restaurant was much more than a place of work for him. It was the story of a life, a legacy. As she reflected, Mike approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He sat down opposite her with a serious expression, but trying to disguise his concern. "I really appreciate all the effort, Sarah. I really do, but it still didn't seem to be enough. I'm afraid that if things continue like this, we'll have no choice but to close the doors." These words fell like a stone on Sarah's heart. She looked at him, feeling the frustration growing inside her. She knew Mike was right, but she couldn't just give up. There was still a chance, one last hope to save the restaurant. "I understand, Mike, but we can't stop now. If we give up now, all the efforts so far will have been in vain. We need to try something bolder, something that will really get people interested in the restaurant and encourage them to come back." Mike sighed, hesitantly. "I appreciate your determination, Sarah, but we're already in such a delicate situation. Risking more now could be dangerous. What if it doesn't work out? What if things get worse?" Sarah understood his fear, but at the same time felt that there was no other option. They needed an idea that would go beyond the expected, something that would bring a new energy to the restaurant and show the community that it was a special place. "I know it's risky, Mike, but if we don't try something new, we'll probably end up closing anyway. We need to give people a reason to come here, something they can't find elsewhere." Mike remained silent, reflecting on what she had said. He knew Sarah was right, but he also feared that a bold attempt could result in more damage. He looked around at the empty tables, and the sound of silence seemed to echo in his heart. The memory of his father, who had spent decades maintaining the restaurant with effort and dedication, also made him want to fight. Finally, he nodded. "All right, Sarah, what do you suggest? If we're going to take a risk, I want to know what you have in mind," he said with a slight smile of acceptance, as if recognizing that perhaps, in that situation, the only way forward really was the boldest. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. "We could do a series of themed events with a complete experience. We could, for example, organize themed evenings inspired by different cultures, with typical dishes, decorations, and even traditional music. People can come not just to eat, but to live a unique experience. This attracts families, couples, groups of friends. We need to show that the restaurant offers more than just a meal." Mike frowned, puzzled. "Theme nights? I've never tried anything like that. But that would mean investing in specific ingredients, decoration, and maybe even live music. It could be expensive," Sarah determined replied, I know it's a risk, Mike, but think, if people have an experience they can't find elsewhere, they'll want to come back. And we can start slowly with one theme night a week, for example, to see how the public reacts. I can help spread the word in the neighborhood and even think about partnerships with small local musicians. It would be a different event, something that would make the restaurant stand out. Ethan, who was listening to the conversation from afar, approached and got involved in the discussion. I think it's a good idea, Dad. I could play one night myself, and I have musician friends who would probably be happy to help out too. I think it could really attract more people. Mike looked at his son and Sarah, absorbing their energy and enthusiasm. It was as if, for an instant, he could visualize the restaurant full, with people smiling, enjoying the food and the music. He knew that, even with the risk, this could be his last chance to turn the place into something prosperous again. After a long moment, Mike finally gave in. All right, let's give it a try. I don't want to close the restaurant without fighting until the last minute. Let's do a theme night and see what happens. But I'm going to need everyone's help. If it goes wrong, at least I'll know we did everything we could. Sarah's face lit up with a grateful smile. Thank you, Mike. We won't let you down. I'll take care of everything I can, from decorating to publicizing. And if you need someone to serve, I'll be here. Let's make this work. Over the next few days, Sarah worked tirelessly to plan the first theme night. She and Ethan decided that the theme would be Italian night, with dishes inspired by traditional Italian cuisine, an atmosphere decorated in vibrant colors, and even a special space for live music. Sarah researched recipes and helped Mike plan the menu. Ethan organized the friends who would be performing and took care of the music. Sarah also spent time creating posters, distributing them around the neighborhood, talking to people, and inviting small groups to the event. She knew she had to make people feel attracted, as if this was a special invitation to a unique event. With each conversation, she felt the enthusiasm grow, and she hoped that this would be reflected on the day of the Italian night. When the evening finally arrived, Sarah and Mike were nervous, but hoped for the best. The restaurant was decorated in green, white, and red, and the tables were covered with Italian-style tablecloths, giving the atmosphere a warm and cheerful feel. Ethan and the musicians began to tune their instruments, while the smell of pasta, herbs, and fresh sauces wafted through the air, filling the room with an irresistible aroma. Little by little, people began to arrive. The first couple entered and looked around, enchanted by the different atmosphere. Soon, other groups began to occupy the tables, and before long, the restaurant was fuller than on any other night in recent months. The sound of live Italian music, combined with the themed decor and the dishes served by Sarah and Mike, created a unique experience. Mike, who was busy in the kitchen, prepared each dish with special care, feeling a new energy in every gesture. From time to time, he would peek through the door to see the restaurant full and the smiles on the customers' faces. The feeling was indescribable. He realized that Sarah's boldness had been the right choice, something that had breathed new life into his restaurant. At the end of the evening, after the last customer had said goodbye and the musicians had put away their instruments, Mike, Sarah, and Ethan gathered at one of the tables. Tiredness was visible on everyone's face, but there was a sense of satisfaction. They had managed to make the restaurant a special place, if only for one night. Mike looked at Sarah with a sincere smile of gratitude. I don't know what I would have done without you, Sarah. Today, for the first time in a long time, I felt alive again. This idea brought back hope that I had already lost. Sarah smiled, feeling relieved and happy. This is just the beginning, Mike. Now we have something to build on. And I know that if we carry on like this, the restaurant will thrive. With the decision to continue holding theme nights, Sarah, Mike, and Ethan felt that they had finally found a way forward. And, above all, they realized that they were together, forming a supportive family, ready to face whatever challenges the future brought. The night was called, and the silence in the restaurant seemed heavier than ever. The only light came from the modest sign on the facade, illuminating the empty streets of the neighborhood. Sarah was sitting at one of the tables, looking away, trying to figure out what else she could do to save the restaurant. During the day, only a few customers had passed by, and she felt defeated. After all the effort, all the theme nights and promotions, Sarah felt as if success was always just out of reach, something she could see but never really touch. And every day of frustration made the hope she was trying to keep alive harder to sustain. Ethan, who had stayed late to help close the restaurant, noticed her state. He had never seen her like this, with her shoulders slumped and her gaze empty. Sarah, who had always been the heart of the place, the person who motivated everyone to keep going, now looked broken. He approached her slowly, sitting down next to her in silence, waiting for her to want to talk. For a while, Sarah remained silent, but Ethan's presence encouraged her to get something off her chest. She looked at him with a tired smile, but her eyes revealed the internal struggle she was facing. "You know, Ethan, sometimes I wonder if I'm just insisting on something that's doomed to fail. I try so hard, but nothing seems to be enough. It's like we're fighting against a tide that's impossible to beat." Ethan listened intently, absorbing every word. He knew that Sarah had become the driving force behind the restaurant, and seeing her frustration touched him deeply. "I understand, Sarah. I feel that pressure too. And I know that my father, as much as he doesn't say it, is going through the same thing. I think that, deep down, he's also afraid that all this won't be enough." Sarah sighed, lowering her gaze to her hands intertwined on the table. "It's hard, Ethan, when I think of Lily, of everything she deserves, and see how far we are from achieving anything stable. It takes my sleep away. I wanted to give her a future and help her father with the restaurant too. But it seems that everything I do ends up being in vain. The effort, the dedication, it all seems to disappear into the void." Ethan, sensing the pain in Sarah's voice, hesitated for a moment before putting his hand on her shoulder. "I know it's hard, but believe me, you've done more for this place than anyone could have imagined. You've brought a new air to the restaurant, something that neither my father nor I could have achieved on our own. Maybe the results aren't showing up in a way we hope now, but what you brought here is special." Sarah gave a sad smile. "Thank you, Ethan. I wanted to believe it was enough. But the fear of failing, of not being able to sustain everything, is almost unbearable. I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to go one step further than what we're already trying." Ethan watched Sarah and saw in her face not only the concern of a determined woman, but also the love of a mother who would do anything to secure her daughter's future. He understood her anguish, as it was a struggle he himself was living, albeit in a different way. The restaurant was his father's legacy, something Ethan also feared losing, although he didn't often express this concern. "Sarah, I'm afraid too," he admitted, his voice low, as if confessing a secret. "I'm afraid that the restaurant will close, that everything my father built will fall apart. And honestly, I don't know what to do. Sometimes I feel powerless watching him fight so hard. You fight so hard, and me here, not knowing how to really help." Ethan's words touched Sarah deeply. She realized that he too carried the weight of responsibility, that he too feared for the future of the restaurant. And at that moment, she felt less alone in her anguish. The tension in the air, which seemed to grow as they both expressed their frustrations, began to give way to a feeling of mutual understanding. "I think we're all in a boat that's half adrift, trying to find a way to get to dry land," said Sarah, sighing. "But maybe that's what we need. This honesty, this partnership. Maybe together we can think of something that will make a difference." Ethan nodded, feeling renewed hope spring up amid the frustration. "You know, Sarah, when you talk like that, I feel that anything is possible, that somehow we'll find a way. I know we have difficult days ahead of us, but maybe this is part of something bigger, part of a journey that isn't over yet." Sarah looked at Ethan, touched by the simplicity of his words. At that moment, she realized that even in the midst of the pain and exhaustion, there was a spark of hope that remained. Perhaps it was small, almost invisible, but it was still there. And that was enough to give her the strength to carry on, to face the next day with her head held high. She leaned a little closer to Ethan, with a sincere, albeit tired smile. "Thank you, Ethan. You don't know how much those words mean to me. Having you and your father by my side makes all this a little less scary." Ethan smiled back, and in that moment of silent complicity, they found brief solace in each other. The night was still dark and cold, but the support they felt between them brought unexpected warmth. Each, in their own way, knew that the journey was arduous and full of uncertainties, but they also knew that together they had a better chance of overcoming the difficulties. As they prepared to leave, Sarah stopped for a moment and looked around the empty restaurant. Perhaps, deep down, the frustration she had felt was necessary, a moment of catharsis, so that she could see everything through new eyes. With Ethan's help and the determination he had awakened in her, she felt ready to face the next challenge. And with that little flame of hope rekindled, Sarah knew that the fight for the restaurant wasn't over yet. The morning after her frustrating conversation with Ethan, Sarah woke up with a renewed feeling, a lightness she hadn't felt for a long time. Although the difficulties were still there, something about that night of venting had stirred her, awakening a new perspective. She had found in Ethan someone who understood her pain and her struggle, and this connection strengthened her in an unexpected way. When Sarah arrived at the restaurant, she found him setting up tables and adjusting chairs. He seemed absorbed in thought, but as soon as he saw her, a slight smile appeared on his face. "Good morning, Sarah," he said in a friendly, almost encouraging tone. "Good morning, Ethan," Sarah replied, coming closer. There was a feeling of complicity between them, something that had been growing since the night before. It was as if, together, they had discovered a new source of energy, and that made her want to think of something that could really transform the restaurant. As they adjusted some details for the day, Ethan broke the silence. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, Sarah, about what we can do to make the restaurant more attractive. And one idea that always crosses my mind is live music. Something simple, but that makes people want to be here." Sarah looked at him, interested. Live music. It was a bold idea, something that would require a new approach, but which could, in fact, be the difference the restaurant needed. "Live music? I like the idea, Ethan. It's something that brings the place to life, something that can really draw people in. But, do you think it's feasible?" Ethan nodded, excited. "Yes, I think so. I have musician friends who could perform here some nights. I could play myself, if that would help. I think that if we do a special evening of live music, people will want to come and enjoy the atmosphere. And maybe they'll be attracted to the food too." Ethan's idea brought a smile to Sarah's face. She could imagine the restaurant full, the tables occupied, the sound of music filling the room and creating a welcoming atmosphere. "That's perfect, Ethan. What's more, we can create musical themes for each night, something that will keep people interested and make them want to come back to see something new." Their enthusiasm grew as the idea took shape. Sarah could already see herself planning special evenings, perhaps with themes that referred to different musical genres, jazz, folk, country, maybe even a bit of blues. They could decorate the restaurant according to the style of music, creating an immersive atmosphere that would be much more than just dinner. It would be a complete experience. "Ethan, I think you've just given us a new chance. We can advertise the event in the neighborhood and invite people to enjoy these musical evenings. We'll plan carefully and make every detail special," said Sarah, feeling the enthusiasm bubble up inside her. Ethan, seeing her excitement, felt even more motivated. "I'm sure this could bring a whole new audience to the restaurant, Sarah. Besides, the atmosphere of live music will make people feel at home, like they're in a space where they're welcome." In the days that followed, they dedicated themselves to planning the first night of live music. Sarah was in charge of spreading the word, going from store to store in the neighborhood, talking to people, and handing out small invitations that she had prepared with Ethan. She explained that the restaurant wouldn't just be a place to eat, but a place to experience unique moments, where each night would bring a new musical experience. Meanwhile, Ethan got in touch with friends who had experience in performing. He managed to organize a small group of local musicians who were willing to play for an affordable price, some even for free, in support of the restaurant. The idea of being part of a project that valued music and the community appealed to them, and this strengthened everyone's resolve. The big day arrived, and the restaurant was decorated with soft lights and colors that matched the theme of the first night, a jazz night. Tables covered with dark tablecloths and discreet candles gave the place a special charm, while the smell of the meals, carefully prepared by Mike, filled the air with a touch of sophistication. Everything seemed to be lining up for this first attempt. The first people began to arrive, and Ethan, who was on stage, kicked off the event with a soft tune on his guitar, accompanied by the saxophonist he had invited. The melody filled the room, creating an atmosphere that soon captured everyone's attention. Sarah, who was watching from one of the tables, felt her heart warm as she saw the effect the music had on people. It was as if, at that moment, the restaurant took on a life of its own. She couldn't help but smile at the sight of the delighted audience, some even closing their eyes, immersing themselves in the experience of live music. The sound of the saxophone resonated through the walls, while Ethan's guitar provided the perfect rhythm, creating a harmony that made the atmosphere pulsate with energy. During a brief pause, Ethan came down from the stage and approached Sarah. He was smiling, and in his eyes there was a spark of hope that she hadn't seen for a long time. "It's working, Sarah. They're enjoying it. Look around. People are really enjoying it." Sarah nodded, thrilled. "You were right, Ethan. The music transforms the atmosphere, brings a soul to the place. This is more than I could have imagined." The event continued, and the evening was a success. First-time customers stayed until the end, some asking for one last song before saying goodbye. Others praised Mike's food, while some promised to return for future musical evenings. There was a sense of achievement in the air, as if everyone, together, had created something special. At the end of the evening, as Sarah and Ethan tidied up the hall, a feeling of satisfaction enveloped them. They knew they had achieved something rare, transforming a simple restaurant into a place that brought people together, where every detail had been carefully thought out to create a welcoming and memorable atmosphere. Ethan turned to Sarah, still smiling gratefully. "That was just the beginning, Sarah. Now we have a real chance. And all this was only possible because you believed. Thank you for not giving up." Sarah looked at him with eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you, Ethan. If it hadn't been for your encouragement, I might really have given up. But now, with these musical evenings, I feel like we're giving the restaurant a new story, something worth fighting for." That night, as Sarah closed the doors of the restaurant and prepared for bed, she felt a peace that she hadn't experienced for a long time. The difficulties were still there, but now she had something more valuable. Hope reborn, strengthened by Ethan's support and the power of music. She knew the journey would still be long, but now, with the restaurant pulsing to the sound of live music, she felt that every challenge would be an opportunity for growth and connection. And so, as she fell asleep, Sarah carried with her the certainty that she was on the right path, ready to face whatever came her way, guided by the strength of friendship and the magic of the music that now filled the restaurant with life. After the success of their first night of live music, Sarah and Ethan realized they had something special on their hands. Inspired by the enthusiasm of the customers and the new energy they felt, they decided to implement a more detailed action plan to transform the restaurant into an even more attractive place. If before the ideas came as trial and error, now there was a clear purpose: to create a unique experience for customers. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and Ethan devoted themselves wholeheartedly to the restaurant, each playing a key role. Sarah took care of promotions and planning, while Ethan concentrated on organizing the live music nights, inviting local musicians, and adjusting the details of the performances. Together, they formed an efficient and motivated team, ready to take on the challenges. On the first Monday of planning, Sarah arrived at the restaurant with a folder full of ideas. Sitting next to Ethan and Mike, she began to share her strategies. "Then I thought we could make a weekly schedule. We'd have a fortune-telling night on Mondays, a jazz night on Wednesdays, and maybe, on Fridays, a night with a variety of themes like blues or country music." Mike, who was listening attentively, nodded in approval. "That sounds amazing, Sarah. This way, we can cater for different tastes and people know they'll always have something special here, no matter what day of the week it is." Ethan excitedly suggested another idea. "What if we also did a loyal customer night? We could offer a loyalty card. After a few visits, the customer gets a discount or a free dessert. It's a way of encouraging them to come back." Sarah smiled, approving of the idea. "Excellent, Ethan, and I can help with the decorations for each theme night. Let's create something that really makes the customer feel part of a special experience." Committed, the three began to put the plan into practice. Ethan drew up a list of musicians and contacted friends who were willing to perform at the musical evenings. Some of them had played at the restaurant before and were happy to take part in this new project. Sarah, for her part, set about creating a unique decoration for each night, something that would bring a special charm to the atmosphere. The afternoon before the first jazz night, Sarah and Ethan were at the restaurant, taking care of the last details. Sarah had bought some candles and tablecloths in shades of blue and gold to create a sophisticated atmosphere that matched the musical style. She lovingly took care of every detail, adjusting the candles and flowers, while Ethan checked the lighting, making sure everything was perfect for the musician's performance. Ethan approached Sarah, watching her work with admiration. "You really have a talent for this, Sarah. The restaurant has never looked better. I think people will feel like they're somewhere else when they come in here." Sarah smiled, pleased. "Thank you, Ethan. I want every night to have a special touch, for people to feel like they're entering a unique space. I think that will make them come back more often. When jazz night finally arrived, the restaurant was packed with customers. The saxophone and piano filled the room with a soft, enveloping melody, while the customers enjoyed the magical atmosphere. Sarah circulated among the tables, observing the positive reactions, while Ethan took care of organizing the next performances. The energy was contagious, and even Mike, who usually concentrated on the kitchen, showed up in the lounge to see the success of the evening. The following Monday, it was time for the guessing night, a simple but fun event. Sarah organized a promotion in which customers could try to guess the special dish of the day to win a complimentary dessert. Ethan, who was helping out in the salon, approached customers enthusiastically, explaining the rules and encouraging everyone to take part. Fun was guaranteed, and the lighthearted atmosphere made the evening a success. During country night, the restaurant was decorated with rustic elements, such as checkered tablecloths and small arrangements of wildflowers. Ethan brought in a band of friends who played country music, and the atmosphere was filled with laughter and conversation. Sarah prepared loyalty cards for the customers, handing one to each table and explaining how they could win prizes on subsequent visits. With each theme night, Sarah and Ethan became more motivated. They noticed customers coming back and saw new faces at each event. Sarah began to dedicate herself not only to decorating, but also to publicizing, using social media and spreading posters around the neighborhood. She posted photos of the events, showing off the cozy atmosphere and the theme nights, which helped attract even more people. Ethan, for his part, kept in touch with the musicians and created themed playlists for the breaks between performances, ensuring that the atmosphere never lost its charm. He even performed on some nights, playing the guitar or piano, which always drew applause from the audience. One day, after one of the theme nights, Sarah and Ethan were sitting at one of the tables, exhausted but satisfied. Mike joined them, and they all shared a moment of reflection. "I never thought I'd see the restaurant like this again," said Mike with an excited smile. "Seeing the place full, hearing people laughing and enjoying the evening, it's more than I could ask for." Sarah smiled, proud of what they had achieved. "This restaurant deserves it all, Mike, and we're going to do a lot more. Every night is a chance to improve, to create something new. I believe we're just getting started." Ethan agreed, adding, "It's been a pleasure to be part of this. And the most important thing is that people now associate the restaurant with an experience, with a place where they feel welcome and happy." The evening went on, and the connection between the three of them was visible. There was something special about that team, a bond that grew stronger with each event, with each joint effort to make the restaurant a special place. Each promotion and theme night became a celebration of friendship, dedication, and hope, and the public responded enthusiastically, returning whenever possible. In the months that followed, the restaurant became a meeting place for the community, a space where everyone knew they would find a good meal, live music, and, above all, a warm and welcoming atmosphere. Sarah and Ethan felt fulfilled to see the impact their ideas had, and Mike, always watching closely, was grateful every day for the decision to trust Sarah and the vision she brought to the place. And so, between theme nights and creative promotions, the restaurant grew into something bigger than they could have imagined. Sarah and Ethan's dedication, coupled with Mike's love for his father's legacy, resulted in a space that went beyond meals. It became a symbol of resilience, a place where people came together to celebrate life, friendship, and mutual support. At the end of each evening, as they closed the restaurant and turned off the lights, Sarah and Ethan exchanged a look of complicity and gratitude, knowing that together they had achieved something that would give meaning to every effort. And with each new day, they were ready to create even more special memories for everyone who walked through those doors. The big day arrived, the long-awaited evening of live music at the restaurant. Sarah and Ethan had been preparing for weeks, but the air was filled with anticipation and a little nervousness. This wasn't just another theme night. It was the moment when Ethan would finally present himself to the public, facing a fear he had carried for a long time. The dream of being a musician had always been with him, but the idea of performing in front of an audience was daunting, an obstacle he had never had the courage to face. Sarah, who had become a friend and a kind of confidant to Ethan, was by his side as they organized the last details. She noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way he fiddled with the strings of his guitar, adjusting and readjusting, as if seeking comfort in the technical preparations. She knew that what he needed, more than any adjustment, was encouragement. "Ethan, Sarah said softly, putting her hand on his shoulder. It's going to be okay. Tonight is special. It's your night. I know you're nervous, but all these people have come to hear what you have to offer. Trust yourself. Ethan smiled, but it was a hesitant smile. I know, Sarah, but what if I make a mistake? What if I don't live up to what they expect? I've never played to an audience like this before. The restaurant is full, and if something goes wrong, Sarah squeezed his shoulder, conveying support with her gesture. You're a great musician, Ethan. Believe that. Everyone who's here has come to enjoy themselves, to hear something genuine. And you have that authenticity that will win over every single person here. The room was decorated simply but cozily. The low lights and candles on the tables created an intimate atmosphere, perfect for the evening of music. Customers were arriving by the minute, occupying every available table. The buzz of voices and laughter filled the room, and the anticipation in the air was almost palpable. For Ethan, this made his heart race even faster. He knew there was no turning back. It was now or never. As the guest musicians prepared the stage, Ethan stood back for a moment, trying to find a calm that seemed to slip through his fingers. Sarah followed him, feeling his anxiety as if it were her own. She knew how much this moment meant to him, and she didn't want fear to stop him from realizing his dream. Remember, Ethan, she said, looking into his eyes, this is your moment. Don't let fear paralyze you. Think about everything you've been through, everything you've done to be here. This is your chance to show who you are and what you're capable of. Ethan took a deep breath, absorbing her words. He remembered the nights of rehearsal, the moments when he played alone, imagining what it would be like to share his music with the world. And, despite the fear, something inside him ignited. He felt that if he had to do it for someone, he would do it for Sarah, for his father, and even for himself. It was an act of courage that he knew he had to face. Finally, the moment arrived. The musicians signaled to him, and Ethan picked up his guitar, feeling the weight and familiarity of the instrument in his hands. The audience applauded softly as he took to the stage, and Ethan looked at the faces in front of him, illuminated by the candles. Among them, he saw Sarah, who gave him an encouraging smile, as if to say without words that he would make it. Ethan approached the microphone, adjusting it with a slight tremor in his hands, and began to strum the first notes. The soft melody filled the room, creating an attentive silence. Gradually, his voice found courage and began to accompany the melody of the guitar, as if he were speaking directly to each person present. The song was his own composition, something he had written in a moment of introspection, and each word he sang reflected a part of his soul, his dreams and fears. As the song progressed, Ethan's tension eased. He connected with the audience in a way he had never experienced before. He felt that, somehow, the notes he played and the words he sang created a bridge between him and everyone there. It was a feeling of liberation, of finally being seen and heard, of sharing something so personal and true. When the song ended, silence gripped the hall for a brief moment, before being broken by a wave of warm applause. Ethan, surprised and thrilled, looked out at the audience, almost unable to believe he had made it. He smiled, a smile that carried relief and happiness. Amid the applause and expressions of appreciation, his eyes met those of Sarah, who was applauding proudly, her eyes shining with emotion. Sarah approached the stage as soon as Ethan came down, holding his hand tightly. "You were amazing, Ethan. Did you see that? Everyone loved it. I knew you had it in you." Ethan, still trying to process what had just happened, squeezed her hand in gratitude. "Thank you, Sarah. I really don't know if I could have done it without your support. You believed in me when I doubted, and today, it was like a dream come true." They continued chatting as the event went on. The energy of the evening seemed magical, with other musicians taking the stage and bringing even more joy and excitement to the atmosphere. Customers came up to congratulate Ethan. Some asked him to play again, while others commented on the beauty of the music he had performed. Mike, who was watching from afar, approached and put his hand on his son's shoulder. "I'm very proud of you, Ethan. I always knew you had talent, but seeing you here, sharing it with everyone, is something I'll never forget." Ethan, overcome with emotion, hugged his father, feeling finally recognized and accepted. The evening had brought something he had always been looking for, a genuine connection with people, a chance to express himself through music. As the hours passed, the evening of live music continued, and the restaurant remained full, filled with joy and excitement. Sarah and Ethan circulated among the customers, chatting and thanking everyone for coming. There was a contagious energy in the air, and the restaurant was livelier than ever. It was as if that night was a turning point, a moment when everything made sense, when all the effort was finally justified. At the end of the event, after the last customer had left and the restaurant was empty, Sarah and Ethan sat together, exhausted but happy. They looked around the room, now silent, but still imbued with the magic that the music had brought. "It was an incredible evening, Ethan," said Sarah with a sincere smile. "You really made a difference. This restaurant will never be the same after today." Ethan nodded, with a twinkle in his eye. "It was everything I ever dreamed of, Sarah, and it wouldn't have been possible without you. Tonight, it's something I'll never forget." As they turned off the lights and closed the doors, Sarah and Ethan knew that, somehow, tonight was just the beginning. The restaurant was now more than a place to eat. It was a haven of expression, a space where dreams came true and where people could find comfort and inspiration. And for them, that was the true meaning of success. The evening of live music was about to begin, and the restaurant was fuller than any other event they had ever been to. The decor was impeccable, the soft lights created a cozy atmosphere, and the musicians were already waiting for their performances. Ethan, however, felt a knot in his stomach. He knew that this would be the first time he had played alone in front of an audience, and anxiety washed over him like a relentless wave. As he watched the busy tables, the sound of chatter and laughter seemed to become a distant echo, drowned out by the racing sound of his heart. His hands, which normally held the guitar firmly, now trembled slightly. He had rehearsed so many times, but at that moment, the fear of making mistakes made him question whether he was really ready. Sarah, who was taking care of the final preparations, noticed the tension on Ethan's face. She approached him, putting her hand on his shoulder in a reassuring gesture. "Ethan, is everything all right? You look nervous." Ethan looked at her, trying to disguise it, but he knew he wouldn't be able to hide his insecurity. "Sarah, I don't know if I can. Look at all those people. What if I make a mistake? What if they realize I'm not that good? I don't know if I'm ready for that." Sarah felt the weight of his words and understood that panic was taking hold of Ethan. He knew that this moment was important to him, that it meant much more than just a musical performance. It was a chance to fulfill a dream, but at the same time, the fear of failure made him almost give up. With a calm and firm voice, Sarah replied, "Ethan, everyone here has come to hear you. They don't expect perfection. They want authenticity. They want to feel your passion for music. You have something special, and I know deep down that you can do it. Believe in yourself, even if it's just for tonight." Sarah's words brought a brief sense of comfort, but Ethan's anxious look didn't disappear completely. Just then, Lily, who was standing next to Sarah, noticed Ethan's nervousness and approached him, holding his hand as firmly as only a child can. With an innocent smile, she said, "You can do it, Ethan. I know you play very well. I've already heard you play for us, and it was beautiful. Everyone here will like it too." Lily's presence, so small and full of confidence, was like an anchor for Ethan. He felt the weight of the responsibility of not only fulfilling his dream, but also of not disappointing those two people who believed in him unconditionally. Still, doubt persisted, and he wondered if he was really prepared to expose his emotions to the audience. Time passed, and the anticipation in the restaurant grew. The audience, waiting for the performance, began to whisper among themselves, looking towards the small makeshift stage. The atmosphere, once light and relaxed, was now shrouded in a silent tension, as if everyone realized that something was about to happen, but didn't yet know exactly what. Ethan, still hesitant, looked at Sarah one last time, searching her eyes for the confidence he couldn't find within himself. Sarah, realizing the gravity of the moment, squeezed his hand and said softly, "Ethan, if you really don't want to do this, I won't force you, but I really know that this is your chance. Don't let fear stop you from living this moment." Those words echoed in Ethan's mind, and he felt one last wave of doubt. He was one step away from giving up, from leaving the stage to one of the guest musicians and disappearing between the tables. But as he looked at Sarah and Lily, who were watching him with eyes full of confidence, something inside him began to change. A small, almost imperceptible spark of courage ignited in his chest. Finally, he took a deep breath and took a step towards the stage. Each step felt heavy, as if he were carrying an invisible burden. As he picked up the guitar, his hands were still shaking, but the presence of Sarah and Lily, who continued to watch with encouraging smiles, gave him strength. He sat down on the stool, adjusted the microphone, and made one last effort to calm his breathing. The tension was palpable, and the audience watched in silence, waiting for the song to start. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, trying to concentrate, and then began to play the first notes. The soft, melancholy melody filled the room, and the sound of the guitar brought a reverent silence between the tables. As he played, Ethan began to lose himself in the music. The tension in his shoulders dissipated, and he began to feel the connection he had always sought when playing alone. Each note was like a reflection of his soul, and he knew he was putting his whole heart into those strings. The audience, once anxious, was now hypnotized by the sound, absorbing every moment, every detail of the melody. Sarah and Lily, who were watching intently, felt relief and pride at seeing him finally conquer his fears. Sarah, her eyes full of emotion, knew that Ethan was giving himself over completely, overcoming doubt and allowing himself to be vulnerable in front of everyone. Lily, with a broad smile, whispered to Sarah, "He's done it, Mom. He's playing beautifully." The music continued, and Ethan seemed to gain confidence with each chord. His voice, which had been hesitant before, now flowed with a firmness that surprised even him. The audience, captivated by the sincerity of the performance, remained completely silent, as if each person there was living the moment together with him. When the song came to an end, there was a brief moment of silence, followed by an explosion of applause. The audience gave a standing ovation, and some even shouted words of encouragement. Ethan, moved and a little dazed, looked around, tried to absorb the moment. He had made it. He had overcome his fear and given himself to music in a way he had never imagined possible. Sarah and Lily were the first to approach him when he came down from the stage. Sarah hugged him tightly, her heart full of pride. "You were amazing, Ethan. Everyone loved it. You did it. You really did it." Ethan, his eyes watering with emotion, replied, I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when I couldn't do it myself. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Lily. This moment is as much yours as it is mine." Lily, overjoyed, gave Ethan a tight hug. "I told you you'd do it. Everyone loved it. You're the best, Ethan." From that moment on, Ethan knew that nothing would ever be the same. Doubt would still exist in his life, as it does for everyone. But now he had proof that he was capable of overcoming it, that the strength to face his fears lay within him, strengthened by the support of those who believed in him. As the restaurant returned to its routine and the next musicians prepared to play, Ethan felt a peace he had never experienced before. He knew that the road would be long, that there were still challenges ahead, but now he was ready to face them because he understood that, with courage and support, even the greatest fears can be overcome. That evening, the restaurant was packed. The sound of excited voices and the clinking of glasses filled the room with a vibrant energy that hadn't been seen there for a long time. New and old customers crowded around the tables, eagerly awaiting Ethan's performance. There was a feeling of something special in the air, an anticipation that seemed to create an invisible connection between everyone present. Ethan, nervous but determined, was preparing for his first public performance. He adjusted his guitar, feeling the weight of each chord as if it were a reflection of his own feelings. He knew that this wouldn't just be a musical performance. It would be a moment of transformation, an opportunity to prove to himself that he was capable. Next to him, Sarah watched with an encouraging smile, knowing that this was a decisive moment not only for Ethan, but for the future of the restaurant. As soon as he took to the small stage, the room was filled with an attentive silence. The audience, who until then had been chatting animatedly, turned their attention to him. Ethan positioned himself, took a deep breath, and let the soft sound of his guitar fill the air. He began to play, and little by little, the music enveloped everyone, creating an almost magical atmosphere. The melody flowed naturally, and Ethan's voice, although a little hesitant at first, found confidence in the audience's positive reactions. He sang as if he were talking to each person there, sharing his emotions through the lyrics and chords. The audience responded with smiles, looks of approval, and spontaneous applause, showing how much they were enjoying this unique experience. At the end of the first song, the restaurant erupted in applause. Ethan, surprised and thrilled, watched the expressions of approval on people's faces, feeling a wave of relief and happiness that seemed to renew his strength. He exchanged a quick glance with Sarah, who applauded him enthusiastically, her eyes shining with pride. This was more than he had expected, more than he had dreamed of. For the first time, he felt truly fulfilled, as if he had finally found his place. With renewed confidence, Ethan continued the performance, playing a sequence of songs he had carefully chosen, each one reflecting a little of his journey and his feelings. With each new song, the audience became more involved, and the atmosphere of the restaurant came alive with the sound of the guitar and Ethan's soft voice. Throughout the evening, Sarah circulated around the room, observing the customers' reactions and feeling a deep sense of happiness. She knew that this moment was the turning point they had been waiting for. Every smile, every round of applause, every expression of admiration was confirmation that the restaurant was taking on a new meaning for the community, becoming a place of encounter and inspiration. Mike, who was watching everything from one of the tables at the back, felt his heart warm. Seeing the restaurant full, hearing people commenting on the music and enjoying themselves, was like a dream come true. He looked at Ethan with pride, recognizing his son's talent and thanking him internally for the courage he had found to take to the stage. As the performance progressed, something remarkable began to happen. Customers passing by on the street, attracted by the sound of the music and the cheerful atmosphere, stopped in front of the restaurant and looked inside, curious. Some even entered, taking up the few seats still available. The news that the restaurant now offered live music nights seemed to spread quickly, and the place was gaining popularity in an unexpected way. At the end of his last song, Ethan was greeted by a standing ovation. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Some customers shouted words of encouragement and praise, while others took photos and videos to record the moment. Ethan, still surprised by the reaction, thanked them with a genuine smile, feeling a deep connection with everyone there. It was as if each round of applause was a recognition of his journey, his efforts, and his courage to face his fear. When he came down from the stage, Sarah was the first to hug him. "You were amazing, Ethan. Everyone loved you. Tonight was a success, and you made it happen." Ethan, overcome with emotion, returned the hug, feeling grateful for Sarah's constant support. "I couldn't have done it without you. Every time I thought about giving up, you were there, reminding me that I could do it. That's as much a credit to you as it is to me." Customers started coming up to congratulate Ethan, some thanking him for the music, others praising the atmosphere and the experience as a whole. The atmosphere was one of joy and celebration, as if each person there felt part of something bigger, something special. Many customers promised to return, attracted by the restaurant's unique proposal and the live music that was now part of the essence of the place. As the room emptied and the last customer said goodbye, Sarah and Ethan stayed behind, organizing the final details and reflecting on the evening. They exchanged glances of relief and accomplishment, realizing that they had achieved something significant. There was finally a sense of purpose, as if all the challenges they had faced so far had been rewarded by this moment. Mike, who was still in the restaurant, approached them both and put a hand on his son's shoulder. "You've done a wonderful job, Ethan. I've never been prouder of you. Tonight was special, and I'm sure everyone who came will remember it." Ethan looked at his father, touched. "Thanks, Dad. I feel like I found something I love doing, something that makes me want to keep going, no matter how hard it is." Sarah, standing next to them, observed the exchange of glances and mutual respect between father and son, feeling part of that achievement. She knew that the restaurant was finally entering a new phase, a phase of recognition and prosperity. With the success of the evening, Sarah and Ethan felt confident to continue with the musical performances and explore even more creative ideas for the restaurant. They discussed new promotions, other theme nights, and even thought about inviting local musicians to expand the event. Each idea they came up with seemed to strengthen the connection between them and the community, making the restaurant an important meeting point for everyone. That night, as the restaurant closed, Sarah and Ethan were exhausted, but there was a genuine smile on their faces. They both knew that that night had marked a profound change, that the restaurant was now more than a place for meals. It was a space where dreams came true, where talent and courage were celebrated, where every customer found something more than they expected. Sarah, with a light heart, looked at Ethan and said, "Today was the start of something special. I know we're going to face new challenges, but now we have proof that it's possible. This restaurant is going to thrive, Ethan. Let's make it a place of joy and inspiration." Ethan nodded, determined. "Absolutely, Sarah. We'll do it together, and I'm sure this will be the first of many successes to come." With the feeling that they had finally found the right path, they both left the restaurant that evening with renewed purpose. They knew there was a long journey ahead, but now they were ready to face it, with the confidence that hard work, talent, and mutual support would be enough to achieve everything they wanted. If you enjoyed this video, comment your age and tell us where in the world you're watching from. And if you'd like to see more content like this, we prepared the next video just for you. Click here to watch